In this lesson, I'm going to show you how time sessions work in PineScript. So to save time, I've already written out the code here, and I'm just going to explain what each line of code does since it's not too complicated. So the first thing I've done here is I've got a time session as a user input. To do that, I've used the input.session function. I've given this a title, and I've set the default value to what you see here. So the time session is in 24-hour time, and the session I'm highlighting on my chart is 0900, 9 a.m. to 1800 or 6 p.m. So this part's pretty easy to wrap your head around. It's pretty intuitive, pretty self-explanatory. This line of code, however, is not, probably, if you're new to coding. What we have here on this line is a custom function. I created this custom function because it's just really easy for you to copy and paste this into any script that you write, or add it to a library if you want to. If you want to reuse this sort of function in many scripts, you could paste this into a library, which I'll show you how to do later in the course. But basically, we have a custom function called isInSession. So whenever I'm dealing with a Boolean function, something that returns a true or false value, I like to start it with is, just so it's obvious that it's a question. Is in session, and then we have a parameter, a custom function parameter or argument. They call them arguments in coding. Not sure why. I think parameter makes more sense to me. It sounds a little bit more cooperative. We're not trying to send an argument to our function. We're trying to send a parameter or a suggestion, if you will. We're suggesting that the function takes this parameter into consideration when it calculates its result. And this parameter doesn't have a data type, but PineScript will automatically assume what data type you want it to be based on what you do with it in your code. So in this case, we're creating a custom function called isInSession with the parameter sess. I like to start my function parameters with an underscore in front of them as well. I think that's just a general practice in PineScript. Most of the inbuilt scripts that TradingView have created for PineScript and a lot of their code examples use this naming convention. They'll put an underscore in front of their custom function variables to signify that it is a custom function variable and only exists within this custom function's scope. And I've made a mistake here. This should be sess underscore sess, and sess is short for session. So you could pass any session into this custom function and it will return true if the current bar is within that time session or false if it's not. And this session parameter underscore sess needs to be a string like this. Now, let me explain what this custom function is doing. It could be a little bit hard to understand just looking at it. First of all, we're starting with the not parameter. So this function will only return true if this is false. If this function, this NA function returns false. And what this NA function is evaluating is this. We're passing in the custom time function and a given time session into that time function. And if you read the description down there, it says the time function returns the Unix time, the timestamp of the current bar for the specified time frame and session, or NA if the time point is out of the given session. So here we are passing in timeframe.period. That is the current time frame we have loaded onto our chart. You could override this with a different time frame if you wanted to, but for the purposes of what we're doing here, highlighting any bars that fall within the given session, we just want to leave it as the current session by default. So this time function returns a timestamp only if the current bar on this time frame, this 15-minute time frame, if the current bar falls within the given time session, then this function will return true. And that's what we do down here under the BG color line of code. We're saying, is the current bar in this given session, which is this guy up here? If so, change the background color to red. Otherwise, do nothing. Leave the background color as it is, whatever the default background color is on your chart. And that's basically it. That's how time sessions work in PineScript. You could use this as a filter. That's how I like to use this. So here in Australia, in the mornings, especially on the Forex markets, the markets get quite slow. My spread gets a bit wacky because volume is thin. There's not much trading happening. And so especially in my automated scripts, I like to include a filter that won't trade during a certain time of day to protect myself from things like gaps in price action and high spreads. One thing that is important to mention is that this time session is based on your exchange time. So if you look down here, if I highlight this line, this first bar that starts printing red, if you look down at my time scale, it actually says midnight 00, so 12 a.m. when I've set my default time session to 9 a.m. So if I right click and come down to settings and I scroll down to the bottom, here is our time zone setting. If I click on this, you can see all of the time zones we have to choose from. If I scroll up to the top and click exchange, click OK, and click OK on this, now my time, bar time, has changed to the exchange time, which I believe is probably American. So this is probably New York time. I'd have to confirm that, but it really doesn't matter. Just make sure to change your chart to exchange time before you start playing around with your time session. So now if I wanted to stop trading at 10 a.m. on my exchange time, I can click on this little drop down box, select 10, and now the red background doesn't start until 10 a.m. So there are many ways you can use this functionality or feature in PineScript. I just mentioned one, using it as a filter to not take trades during a certain time of day. Another useful use case for this that I've used in the past is to highlight the time when I'm asleep. So if I set my time back to Brisbane time where I live and I click OK, you can see that this is highlighting from 1 a.m. now to 9 a.m. So if I want to highlight the time I'm asleep, that would be around 11 p.m. till 7 or 8 a.m. I wouldn't really start trading till 9 a.m. because of the problem I mentioned. The spread gets a bit crazy between 6 and 9 a.m. for me. Around 9 a.m. is when the Japan and Australian trading begins. The market's officially open. So maybe I don't want to take any trades between that time period. I can drop this down to, let's try 8 a.m. There we go. So now I'm highlighting the time of day that I would normally be asleep or at least not trading. And so if I'm going through my back testing process and I'm manually testing a strategy, this is a great way to visually quickly identify any trading setups I wouldn't be able to take because I wouldn't be at my charts. So that's one other use case. You can also highlight trading sessions that you do want to trade. Maybe you want to highlight the first hour of trading and maybe you only trade the open in a stock market, for example. There's just, you get the idea. There's a lot of ways you can use time sessions in your scripts. And this is how you do it. So I'll leave this code beneath the video for you to play around with if you want to. And I think that'll sum it up for this lesson. Not much more to say on this one. I think I've mentioned everything important. The best way to learn what this function does, this custom function, is to just play around with it in your own scripts. So I'll leave you to do that, and I'll speak with you in the next lesson.